Smash leaks. Some are real, some are fake. Some are good, some are bad. Worse. But until that final character is revealed for Smash, until Sakurai says there are no more characters we are done developing for the game, leaks are just going to be a constant. Whether real or fake, it's just always going to happen. And so today, we're going to take a look at a potential leak that was posted to, you guessed it, the one and only 4chan. Okay, so now that you've already got your comment posted, yeah, this is fake. And it's not just because, oh, that doesn't seem real, it's because I literally made it. That's how I know it's fake. So this was kind of a little experiment that I wanted to throw together for a couple of reasons. The first main reason is that I kind of just wanted to learn the ropes of Smash Ultimate modding. But second, I wanted to see if I could make a mod that looked polished enough that if it was presented as a quote leak, people would at least talk about it. People saying that it's fake on 4chan is a bigger deal and is more noticed than it just being straight up ignored. So that's what I set out to do. But the journey didn't start with this Master Chief mod. It started with Jonesy. I have been a big supporter for Jonesy getting a Mii Fighter costume in Smash. If you followed my channel for a decent amount of time, you'll know that. So my thinking was, what better fake leak to make than something that I would already want in Smash, sort of forcing myself to ensure it looks its best because it's something that I want. But that plan did not go well in the slightest. Basically, my idea was to plop the models from Fortnite onto a Mii Fighter, see how that looked when I sort of conformed it to the proportions, and go from there. So I started off making a Mii that resembled Jonesy in order to add a layer of legitimacy to the eventual leak, and then I started to work on the actual costume. Now the execution was not the best, but it was a really good foundation for the learning experience and what it takes to make a mod for Ultimate. Surprisingly to me, the skin functioned in the game pretty much right away. It looked bad, and sometimes Jonesy would just straight up leave his body parts behind, but the game didn't crash, which is something I was fully expecting from the very first attempt. So things started off well, but then the struggle to make it look good began, and honestly, for Jonesy, it just never got better. The Smash Ultimate engine has a new way of making models look better, which uses an image file that wasn't used in any Smash games before. Essentially, the game looks for different layers of red, blue, and green colors in a single image file in order to make a model look a particular way. This handles everything from a model looking like skin, to metal, or something squishy, or looking like clothing. And I had no idea what I was doing. And despite getting help from people who knew far more than me, I still ended up with something that just looked really scuffed. So the arms look shiny, the textures look rough, and the body definitely looks like I just squashed it down to fit the size of a Mii, and that's because I totally did. I tried to make it look as good as I personally could, a few tweaks to the model here and there, and for what it's worth, I do think that this is a really good first attempt. The trouble mostly just came from the lack of knowledge that I had about this new game. Oh, and it also turns out that I basically had exactly one setting wrong on my Photoshop that made everything look like absolute dog turd. On top of that, I tried to make it seem more legitimate by throwing in a Durr Burger head as kind of a bonus costume, but of course all of the issues with Jonesy applied to the Durr Burger head as well. But at this point, it was looking the best that I could make it, so I posted it to 4chan. And it got like -2 replies, and really only one was constructive. This dude nailed pretty much everything that I did or screwed up. And he did it without calling me a slur, which is actually really surprising considering this is 4chan. Oh yeah, I actually did leave the mouse cursor in there, that's pretty funny. So after the horrible flop at a fake Smash leak, I started to think about what I wanted to actually mod into the game, just as a mod. I wanted it to be less about adding a Nintendo rep or fixing colors I didn't like, or, replacing a character with Ninja.
Fuck you say to me!
I just wanted it to be something that would feel almost official in a Smash game, outside of the fact that it is not official in the game. And working with this Jonesy Mii really got me attached to the idea of these deluxe Mii Fighters. Sans, Cuphead, Bomberman, these costumes that basically make you the entire character really kind of resonate with me. It's like the best middle ground option for me in my opinion. The character itself isn't a full-on fighter, it's still the Mii moveset, but you can basically suspend your disbelief enough that you don't have a Mii there, it looks like Sans, it looks like Cuphead, so it feels like they're almost in the game properly. So then it became a matter of who to make the costume for. And ultimately, I decided on Master Chief, because it seemed like he was going to be added as a costume along with Steve, and it was a real surprise when he wasn't. Now, I'm by no means skilled enough to model out Master Chief on my own. I just don't have that kind of a skill set. So I'd have to look at all of the different Master Chief models that exist and see which one fits Smash the best. And ironically, the one that fits Smash best, again, comes from Fortnite. They'd recently revealed Chief as a skin for the latest season, so it was easiest to just grab a rip off of the internet and start working. Again, I scaled down the body and helmet to be about the size of a Mii, but I was a bit more careful. One, because I actually took what that guy on 4chan said to heart, and two, I wanted people to actually like this mod and want to download it, and so I wanted it to look its best. So I did my best to avoid that goat-leggedness that Jonesy had, and I paid better attention to how the body parts actually moved. My rough comparison to use for this costume was the Samus Mii costume with the full helmet and armor. Samus is a comparable height to Chief as far as proportions go, and the way that her body moves kind of works similarly to the way Chief's moves, so if the official Samus costume can look a little bit scuffed, I think that an official Chief one would likely look similar. And I think I did an alright job, but this whole time I was working only with the green armor. During some of my research for modding, I realized that all Mii costumes technically have the ability to have different colors. It's just that for every costume that doesn't have a color option, they literally just duplicate the costume 12 times so that it doesn't appear to change colors if you are changing the Mii's color. So I figured that custom colors are a big thing in Halo multiplayer, why not bring that to the Smash Mii costume? And so I did. I mean, it's not exactly as detailed as you can get in Halo because Smash has made it a bit more limited, but if you wanted to make a red versus blue machinima in Smash, you'd be able to get away with it. During the process, I shared some of the screenshots and videos with my friends just to show them what's possible, and one of them brought up the idea of posting it to 4chan with phone footage just to see what happens. Which is really funny because I hadn't even told anybody about the Jonesy failure. I wanted to keep that under wraps. So I figured I'm being told this advice, what's the harm in trying one more time? Since this one was definitely more polished than the last one, it would at least have that going for it. And the only full costume in the official game able to completely change colors for both the headwear and the outfit has been Bomberman. So I thought that having this addition for the Chief leak would give it a little bit more credibility, or at the very least be something new to talk about. And this one got far more attention, and while many still mentioned that it was fake, or told me to release the mod and don't be a pussy, a few people actually entertained the idea that it could be real, and were like super sad that Chief wasn't going to be a full-on fighter. I probably blew my cover a little bit by pretending I was a super insider at Nintendo, but I didn't really expect anyone to buy it, so I figured that I had nothing to lose on that end. But it was really interesting reading through this thread, looking at the replies. It ended up being a Smash character debate, which these things always end up being, but it was still cool that it was under the umbrella of this leak that I made. One guy even mentioned the Jonesy leak specifically, not of course knowing that I actually made both of these, but I just thought it was neat that the other thing that I made got brought up in this thread. A couple days later, I posted the video that I posted to 4chan onto my Twitter, pretending that someone on Discord sent it to me. Now, I've got a bit more reach on my Twitter than I do on some random 4chan post, so I just wanted to see what the general reaction was there. And the responses there were overwhelmingly saying that this is just a mod, so good on you guys for staying skeptical and not just straight up believing anything. Of course, a few people did believe it, but the majority did not. A few of the bigger Smash modders took notice of it as well, and they were able to pick it apart even more. For example, the hand isn't rigged, so it just sort of stands there completely lifeless. And I'm not gonna lie, I totally meant to go back to that before I posted, but I honestly just straight up forgot. Some people even called out that this was literally the Fortnite model, which I'm impressed by because it shows a level of detail more than what I expected. But the cherry on top was of course getting featured on the big leak YouTube channels and on some of the websites that report on these supposed Smash leaks. Now, obviously, pretty much all of them in this day and age are coming from the angle of this is a mod, this is not real, but I think it's still neat that something I did ended up being talked about by these bigger channels that people sort of always go to, or these websites that always, report on this kind of stuff. I think it's really neat that I did that. And despite most everyone saying that this is a mod, a ton of people actually said that it looked really good and that it was really well made. And honestly, that makes me feel really good because it basically satisfied what I wanted to do when I first set out to make this mod. I wanted to make something that was so well made that it would not feel out of place in an official title. And that is how I made a fake Smash leak. In this day and age, it's really easy to mod Smash, so any leak that pops up should immediately be assumed to be a mod or a fake, especially since Nintendo has cracked down so hard on keeping information from leaking out. This was honestly a crazy experience. Whenever I would see it brought up in a Discord or on a different website, I would think, it's weird, I just made that for fun. And then I decided to post it, and now people are talking about it. Even if they aren't talking about it in a way that says this is real, it's crazy that they're just talking about it at all. These 3 images were posted to someone's Snapchat and they were quickly spread throughout the internet. The first is a picture with an LOL filter over it showing the blank background of the Ultimate banner with a round thing in the background with the completed image. The second picture shows that these were allegedly for a kind of wristband with the Smash and Switch logos along with the full cast. The caption is in French and translated it says F Nintendo LOL. And the final image is the alleged full cast with quite a few characters that hadn't been announced at that point being found on further inspection. Isaac from Golden Sun, Banjo and Kazooie, Shadow the Hedgehog, Ken from Street Fighter, the Chorus Kids from Rhythm Heaven, Geno from Super Mario RPG, and Mach Rider were the discovered characters based on comparison with the original, and even then there was still speculation on other characters in there because of how poor quality the picture was. Now, the weird thing about this leak was just how far down the rabbit hole people went to either prove or disprove it. While the person's name is blacked out, people believe that they knew who it was. And because this was apparently marketing material and the caption was in French, many searched for French marketing companies that had done work for Nintendo before, and more importantly, ones that were actively doing promotional work for the then upcoming animated Grinch film. The first and second images both show renders of the Grinch and his dog Max, which led credibility to the theory that this leak may have been from a real print shop. And if the shop is doing work for a DreamWorks movie, then this must be from a legitimate source, and therefore the Smash material is also genuine. And this is obviously where the Grinch leak name comes from, as this is what people pointed to investigate it in the first place. Now, I saw a ton of people be like, I can't believe people think the Grinch is going to be in Smash, and no, it wasn't that, it was just that the Grinch was in the background, and so that's what led people to start investigating. Now, using the original uploader's information, people were led to a LinkedIn profile where the person listed their employer as Marina PLV, which is a marketing and promotional material print shop. On their website, they have listed their past clients, and Bandai Namco is front and center among the other logos. And Bandai Namco, as it turns out, is the developer of Smash Ultimate alongside Sakurai. So far, everything checks out as pretty plausible. Now, it's not necessarily that Bandai Namco are the ones handling the marketing, but maybe they just gave Nintendo a recommendation and Nintendo went with it, based on this logic anyway. But then some daring individuals actually reached out to Marina and they inquired about the employee in question. And it turns out that he no longer worked for them and had left 2 years prior. But as it turns out, the leak didn't actually come from Marina. It came from ACP PLV, which is another French print shop, which coincidentally, the leaker actually currently worked at. So already we have some doubt thrown into the mix here, and it's about this time that people truly start to take sides on whether this thing is real or fake. Before, it was basically just whether or not you liked the characters that were shown, but now with some evidence backing it up, and this leak being the constant point of discussion in the community, some passionate opinions are being formed. Now, personally, none of this pointed me away from believing it could be real, but I did, of course, have my healthy amount of doubts, as with any leak. Nintendo was doing all kinds of events to promote Smash Ultimate at this time, so it maybe made some sense for there to be wristbands made for some kind of an upcoming event. There were a bunch of different tournaments. There were, in America anyway, a bunch of demo stops at malls and things, so it didn't seem too unlikely for this to be the case. And a leak from a print shop really doesn't seem that unlikely either, so the actual circumstances of the leak never exactly sounded fishy to me. But we're not done yet. Oh no. Next, people hunted the internet for more information, desperate to prove their side one way or the other. And that led to a video on ACP PLV's YouTube channel, which showed off their workspace. The originally leaked image showed some industrial printer settings in the background, and as it turns out, apparently there are some printer enthusiasts in the Smash community because ACP's printers use that exact printer setting, which means that we have an actual employee for an actual company using actual printer settings that match the printers used on ACP's video. Now, I'm unsure if the video playing now is the exact same video that people found, but it's the current video that's on ACP's website, and so I imagine if it's not the exact same one, it's very, very similar. But if that wasn't enough, ACP ended up deleting that video, and many thought that this was some pretty damning evidence. The comment section of that video pretty much became entirely Smash related, and so people were sure that if they had nothing to do with Smash, they could just simply disable the comments. I mean, why would they delete it if they don't have anything to hide? So people drew a conclusion that Nintendo must have made them delete that video because this was used to prove that the leak was legitimate and Nintendo wanted to keep that information from the public as quickly as possible. And on top of that, people were sure that if this person was just making a big prank, he would get in a ton of trouble for using company materials, company money, property, resources for non-work related things. So that would be a really big gamble for somebody to do at work just for a silly internet prank. And that led people to have confidence that it had to be real and it had to be on the job printed specifically for Nintendo because, no one would ever abuse a company's policies and just mess around, It's never been done before, ever. So let's stop again and have another sort of reflection. First, people were sure that the deleting of the ACP video was a smoking gun, and it was evidence that there was something to hide. But honestly, it makes sense in retrospect. I see where they are coming from, and if it had been real, I would have agreed with them. But this video was on the front page of ACP's website. It was meant to be an introduction and a sort of quick rundown for any new potential clients that were looking to hire ACP for any kind of service. So now imagine that you are a small business. This company has probably less than 100 employees, and they aren't the biggest fish in the pond. Now, this re-uploaded video only has 310 views since it was re-uploaded last year. So they obviously don't have a ton of new clients. So imagine that a potential client clicks this video and looks in the comments and sees a bunch of gamers arguing using a bunch of gamer words. The client could easily be put off by that or really confused and maybe want to look for another service or company. So from a marketing and a PR standpoint, it just makes a lot of sense for the company to just take the video down, wait for it to blow over, and then just re-upload the video good as new. But I can also see how at the time it made people jump up and down and freak out about the possibility of it being real. Another big point of contention was the actual art itself. A ton of videos came out assessing the assets and deciding whether or not it was real, and most notably was Artsy Omni, who created the infamous Smash 4 Rayman hoax. So if anybody knows anything about creating hoaxes for Smash, it is Artsy Omni. But he wasn't the only one, and a ton of them concluded that the blank backgrounds were not accurate to the real piece, and it was clear that they were using some basic Photoshop tactics to fill in the blanks rather than having access to the actual original background. But again, this was an area where it was enough to sow doubt, but it wasn't really enough to disprove anything outright. There was still the air of, alright, this looks kinda sketchy, but what if it's not? What if it's real? Now, the final thing that wasn't necessarily linked to the Grinch leak, but was sort of evidence to support it, was that CoroCoro reported that there would be 108 stages in Smash Ultimate. Now, prior to this, we learned that there would actually only be 103 stages in a previous Direct, but if you were to look at all of the characters, there are actually 5 new series that have yet to be represented in Smash, and so people concluded that those 5 stages that aren't accounted for in the Direct versus the CoroCoro are those new stages for the new characters that are coming. What I think really happened here is that CoroCoro kind of just jumped the gun. We knew about 103 stages, and CoroCoro presumably had information regarding the DLC characters and that each one would come with a stage. We have 5 DLC fighters in the Fighter Pass. That adds up to 108. So CoroCoro knew about this, but the general public didn't. So it's very possible that they just sort of accidentally said there are going to be 108 stages before the entire world knew. And so that's why they reported that, but people linked it to the Grinch leak because it was technically the truth, just not for the Grinch leak, for the Fighter Pass that we didn't know about yet. And then right before the November 1st Direct, Vergeben came out and said that the Grinch leak is false for a number of reasons. The first is that Isaac was an assist trophy, and that was a blow to the Grinch leak because Isaac was a fighter in the mural, but that Ken and Incineroar would be the actual final 2 fighters for the game. And that's kind of where it ends. It's a little bit anticlimactic how it ends, but that's all we really have. The November 1st Direct came around, and it started with Ken versus Little Mac, which sort of gave everybody a, wait a second. Ken was in both. We don't know which was real because Vergeben said Ken and the Grinch leak had Ken, so they weren't sure. But then immediately Incineroar was shown, and we were proven that the Grinch leak was completely false, and Vergeben was right. And that's kind of where it ends. We kind of just like in an instant, we're told, all right, Grinch leak, totally fake. Which just blows my mind because this was like the most elaborate, I mean, maybe accidentally elaborate hoax, but the way that the community sort of dove in and we have all of these details to talk about and all of these things that were for or against it, it just blows my mind that this happened and we still don't know who made the leak. If you're out there, man, I don't know if you're watching, if you're French, if you even understand what I'm saying, but I am blown away. I would love to chat with you if you somehow would like to. I don't think you would, though, because it's been a full year and you still haven't come out at all. So if anybody knows anything, I would love to know. But I think this is going to be one of the great Smash Ultimate mysteries, and we're just never going to know who made it, and we're just going to be left in the dark forever. But honestly, in retrospect, I can see why people believed the Grinch leak because it had stuff going for it, even though it had stuff going against it. And all of the leaks out there have had something for it and against it. And so I don't blame anybody who was firmly in the Grinch camp, especially because, people weren't necessarily being 100% objective because maybe they saw Shadow or they saw Geno and they were like, oh my gosh. And then they just were completely in the Grinch leak camp, no matter the evidence. So if you're being objective, there's definitely more doubt to sort of admit to, but because people's favorite characters were involved and people actually had an emotional interest in this, I could see why they were just so torn apart by this. And that's pretty much everything. I'm still blown away, like I said, that this happened and that we don't know who did it. Did they know it was going to get as big as it did? Did they think it would even spread outside a small fan group or something? I don't know. Were they even French? I just don't know, man. I would love to be able to talk to whoever made it, but there's no way to prove it, I don't think. In September 2018, a new leak emerged on 4chan that claimed Ken from Street Fighter was joining Smash Ultimate. This image showed only Ken in a thumbs-up pose on the Moray Tower stage. Later down the thread, the original poster shared the full uncropped image, which had Ivysaur, Pichu, and Pac-Man alongside Ken, each performing taunts in what appeared to be a debug mode for the game. Initially, some aspects of this image were called into question, but this leak was a rare instance where everything had a valid explanation. Pichu's portrait cut off part of its ear, but this was also done in the E3 reveal trailer. Both Ken and Pac-Man's feet clip through the slope platform that they're standing on, and Ken's shadow does not appear on the metal grate. However, at this point in the pre-release cycle, Smash Ultimate had routine demos available at different events, from E3 to Smash tournaments to random malls throughout the country. A Smashboards forum user recreated the shot in the demo with substitute characters. Pikachu filled in for Pichu, and Ryu for Ken. And everything that was initially suspect proved to be actual behaviors for the real game. Of course, Ken was eventually revealed, proving this leak right. Ken's thumbs up taunt was used in another alleged leak, this time of Cacodemon and Mallow being Mii costumes. Ken was placed there as a callback to the first leak, in an attempt to persuade everyone that this was real. And naturally, this was ultimately proven false. But the use of thumbs up Ken in these posts resulted in this pose becoming a meme in its own right in the Smash community. In February 2015, multiple images were uploaded onto 4chan claiming that Rayman was going to be a downloadable fighter in Smash 4. This post was done after the confirmation that Mewtwo would be returning to Smash as a DLC fighter, so many people reasonably and correctly assumed that more DLC characters would be coming after Mewtwo, and this leak took advantage of that assumption. These images were the unlocked splash art that Rayman has and that every character has, his portrait on the character select screen, and a close-up of the character select icons. The last one is the most interesting of these images because it shows Mewtwo at the end of the Pokemon characters and Rayman next to the third-party characters. Later in the thread, the 3DS version's roster was also shown with Mewtwo and Rayman in similar spots as the Wii U version, but Artsy Omni has said that he did not post this and apparently it came from some third-party source. There was also a screenshot of the main menu which showed a new shop icon towards the bottom, which at the time was a seemingly new addition. Now, of course, these images were combed over and any detail, any flaw that could indicate that they were false was looked for, which of course happens with literally any leak, both fake and real. But the biggest red herring of all was of course what was posted just after, which was a link to a YouTube video which had footage of the player cursor moving across the character select screen and hovering over Rayman. And this is really what seemed to convince a ton of people that this was real. Now, people of course scrutinized this video as well, looking at very tiny details such as the background that loops or the fact that whoever filmed this didn't actually select Rayman, which of course would have been a very easy way to avoid the fact that there is no Rayman announcer call in the game, and so that was kind of the two big pieces of evidence that any naysayers had. But by and large, I think most people are willing to admit that this really sold them on the idea that this could potentially be very real. First off, the render was entirely original, and it didn't even seem to be slightly similar to other Rayman art at the time, so there wasn't really a solid argument that it was just a really good Photoshop. A lot of times, fake leakers will take pre-existing art and sort of smashify it that way, but this was a completely original pose. The fact that Rayman was also apparently a DLC character also lined up with an assumed slip-up by a Nintendo rep who said that Rayman was going to be in the game.
Rayman and a whole bunch of others.
Additionally, very rarely do leaks have video footage attached to them, because assuming that they don't want to get caught, a picture is far faster and it still gets the point across. But having video was something that was just so rare, and it is still rare to this day, and with nothing so obviously off to immediately draw suspicion, a large portion of the community believed that this was real, until the video was taken down. Now, usually when a video is taken down for a leak, it's considered a good thing. Most people would agree that the video being removed was some kind of admission of guilt in some way, basically proving that it was real and it needed to be removed because they needed to suppress the leak. The problem is, the video wasn't taken down by Nintendo like other real leaks. When true leaks are taken down, they'll be removed by Nintendo in a copyright claim, and the video page will say that. But this video was simply taken down by the user, either made private or just completely deleted, but that itself is suspicious. And then of course, we got the big news drop. Through all of the discussion, the analysis, the speculation, we were told that this was completely fake, and what's more, it was a publicity stunt by an artist named Artsy Omni as a way to advertise for his new series, Smashify. Artsy Omni released several videos detailing the creation of both the Rayman art as well as the leak itself. First, his motivation for creating the leak, aside from using it to launch his Smashified series, is truly that he wanted Etika to cover it. He had watched Etika's videos prior, and at the time, Etika was one of the biggest creators covering Smash news and Smash leaks, and Omni had seen some of the fake leaks covered by Etika, and he thought that he had the skills to make a far more convincing leak that could end up on Etika's channel. which it ended up doing. But he was completely blown away by how far across the internet his leak went. He completely did not expect it, but a ton of major gaming news outlets covered it, as well as countless YouTubers, discussion boards, forums, and thousands of tweets. But this wasn't Omni's first foray into the world of fake leaks. He actually did one earlier in Smash 4's life cycle, during the lead up to the game's release, when we were still in the dark about the game's full base roster. Omni made a fake render in a very similar format to the Rayman leak for Klonoa, the main character of the game series, Klonoa. This Klonoa render was just as high quality as the Rayman render, and the claim this time around was that files from non-English versions of the website were accidentally put on the server prematurely and quickly taken down after somebody grabbed them. And just like with Rayman, everything seemed pretty convincing, but the issue was actually with some Japanese text. One of the images has Japanese text on it, and the text wasn't changed from the original files that this hoax was based on, and so the Japanese text actually says Ike rather than Klonoa, and this was immediately pointed out and completely debunked. However, Omni took what he learned from the Klonoa leak and made sure that every last detail was as accurate as possible. After the Rayman render was created, the first thing Omni did was capture footage from the game that would serve as a template for him browsing through the menus and loading up the character select screen. He broke up all of the essentials, the cursor, the icon shuffling into place, and he added 2 extra slots, one for Rayman and the other for Mewtwo. He also needed to create a new Mewtwo icon, but he only needed to make a small portrait for this part because he wasn't showing a full Mewtwo render. So he took the existing model for Mewtwo that already exists in the game as a trophy, and he did some touch-up on it, giving it the same coloration and giving it other minor details so that it would match the model that was shown off in the reveal for Mewtwo. This was an important detail because, as I said, Mewtwo was already a confirmed DLC, so it would stand to reason that the first DLC character would already be on the character select screen in a leak for the second DLC character. The hardest part seemed to be making the background because he didn't have the full thing, so he really needed to just patch together the pattern as best he could. Of course, if this had been made even a year later, we would have had access to this file thanks to modding, and it would be much easier to make this happen. But him patching it together like this makes it all the more impressive since it was all Photoshop and After Effects manipulation. But it wasn't entirely perfect, and Omni points out that the background isn't exactly seamless in the final version. But for the sake of the fake leak, it was passable, as it's hard to notice in the first place, and footage being filmed on a cell phone in poor lighting is going to help cover up any of those tiny flaws. Lastly, he simply had to piece together some of the smaller details, the series icon, the speed lines that move with the actual render on the player card, and the reaction to the icons and the cursor. Honestly, looking back at this hoax, I have to say that had he not come forward within a day to state that this was his work, I would have believed it all the way until it was undeniably proven false by none other than Nintendo. I mean, that's just how convinced I was that this was real. Everything seemed official, and between the photos and the video, it just screamed legit. Of course, that was the whole point of this leak, to make it so convincing that the community at large believes it, so even now I say job well done because it definitely hit the mark. And I think the Klonoa leak aspect makes it even more interesting. Despite that being denied almost immediately, it made Omni pay attention to such fine detail that no matter how you would look at it, unless you noticed exactly the 1 or 2 tiny flaws, you would believe that it was real at first glance. And unlike the Grinch leak, rather than relying on fuzzy photos and real-world circumstantial evidence that I'm still not even sure was planned, this hoax really thrived on being as accurate as possible to convince people. But unfortunately, both of these leaks broke our hearts. But Klonoa and Rayman aren't the only 2 fake Smash renders because, as I said, this was the launch of a whole YouTube series called Smashified, and the channel has assembled a whole bunch of really talented people to make 26 new Smash characters, other trophies, and songs. The channel itself has also evolved into Curiomatic, a channel all about different aspects of game design. 3D model sculpts, music, fonts, remasters, it really covers a whole variety of topics. It's honestly really cool to see. I'm super impressed by everything that's on there. More and more I've been appreciating indie developers, both on a games front and in art and creation as a whole, and Smashified and Curiomatic really praise this aspect of creativity, which I love. So just like tons of other leaks, both real and fake, this leak started on 4chan. This was a basic text post leak that of course had very little credibility, as they do. There was just nothing to back it up, no images or footage, it was just a random claim. But this text post claimed a lot. It claimed that Snake, Lucas, Ice Climbers, and Wolf were cut, that Dr. Mario and Dark Pit were clones, that each character would get 8 costumes, that Alf would be a part of Olimar's costumes, and that Shulk, Bowser Jr., and Duck Hunt would be newcomers, as well as detailing specifics about their movesets. And as we've seen in the past, text posts like this largely get ignored. They're fun for discussion, but most of the time they are found to be wrong. But we of course have the benefit of hindsight here, so we can tell that everything they said in this post was true. On August 19th, 2014, a 4chan user made a casual post with all of the confirmed characters for Smash 4, both new and returning, and they asked who others thought would get cut. A second anonymous user responded to this thread with an updated version of the original poster's image. It had red X's all over the non-returning characters, a question mark over Mewtwo, and previously unseen renders for Jigglypuff, Ness, Dr. Mario, Mr. Game & Watch, Wario, and Rob. On top of this, they added 4 new icons at the end for unrevealed newcomers: Bowser Jr., Duck Hunt, Dark Pit, and Shulk. This graphic immediately got people's attention because of the seemingly brand new images that were used, suggesting that the poster had insider information. A user named Motherfucking Leaker followed up in that thread with 2 additional images, one of it showing a larger scale image of Duck Hunt and revealing that he would have the duck alongside him. This image also showed Ness's render, previously unseen. The second image was a picture of the 3DS with the full roster. After this, a third account then posted further images, including Shulk and Dr. Mario's renders, the stage select screen, the customs menu, and another image of the full roster, this time with both screens, confirming that Bowser Jr. would indeed use his clown car. You can see in these images that the 3DS's name was also visible as ESRB0083, implying a connection to the ESRB and thus where this leak gets its name from. But as with all leaks, things were immediately questioned about these images despite the sheer amount of images that were posted. The first seemingly red flag was that the names of the characters were not underneath the icons for the roster in the leaked image. Now at the time, this directly contradicted images that we had seen at E3, where the names of the characters were underneath their images. Many people also found some of the choices for characters odd, such as Bowser Jr. and Duck Hunt. They also found the arrangement of the character select screen icons strange and inconsistent, particularly with the bottom 2 rows, but also with characters not belonging where they should. Additionally, Ness's previously unseen render was compared to past renders from both Smash and Earthbound, and many people drew issue with it. In every Smash game prior, as well as in Earthbound, Ness has a very specific number of stripes on both his shirt and his sleeves, and has a very specific curve in his shirt, being consistent in both. However, based on this leak, the render did not include the shirt curve, and the number of stripes on the shirt was now no longer consistent, which goes against every Smash game prior as well as Earthbound, and it was used as evidence that this was a well-made leak, but it simply missed the mark on some of the details. But this was by no means the only nitpick. A ton of stuff was called into question. Wario's image on the character select screen was questioned as not being genuine, rather being taken from a cutscene in Brawl's Subspace Emissary mode. People claim that this was simply photoshopped and that they were relying on the low resolution of the 3DS paired with the poor detail in the camera image to cover up any potential flaws. Dr. Mario's render was also called into question, and it was accused of being an edit of a popular fan render simply tweaked to look a little bit more legitimate because the pose is very, very similar. Bowser Jr. and Dark Pit were also in similar situations, as old images for both could be found that easily could have been repurposed for a fake leak. But of course, the most infamous line is regarding Shulk. A ton of people saw Shulk and they drew issue with it, and a rather famous image now compares an in-game screenshot of Little Mac to the Shulk render that's used for the game. Many people believe Shulk was just a photoshopped Little Mac due to their faces being in the same alignment and having similar facial features. Once Shulk was proven to be in the game, however, people started to mock this line, and it has since become just a huge Smash meme, even being mentioned now when we're talking about Smash Ultimate leaks. The 4chan thread with all of this information and all of these images eventually closed down, but a user named MasterLinkX followed this up by posting on GameFAQs with 3 more images. The first image was of Charizard and Lucina fighting the then unconfirmed characters Ganondorf and Shulk on Yoshi's Island. The second showed Shulk's render on the victory screen, and the third was a clearer image of Shulk's victory screen, showing his victory pose and his model up close. Despite us knowing now that all of these images were real, it seems very weird, but Master Link X claimed to have photoshopped those images, and at the time it was believed that the leak was simply an elaborate hoax. However, this leak became relevant again thanks to Famitsu. The Tomodachi Life stage, which had already been officially revealed, was shown on the stage select screen, and in the icon there had been a then unseen room. In the Famitsu screenshot, this same room was shown based on furniture layout and color scheme, but it was in a slightly different angle. People believe that because the angles were so different, these had to be two unique photos rather than somebody who had early access to the Famitsu picture, and so it proved that they couldn't be the same image, and it strongly suggested that everything that was posted in that leak was legitimate. But then all hell broke loose when a YouTube user named IsAtTrue posted multiple videos of early access footage of the game. And this is where a majority of people began to believe that this leak was real, because people are far less skeptical of full video than they are of basic images, because those can be easily photoshopped. The previous images that had been posted of matches with Lucina, Shulk, Ganondorf, and Charizard had now been posted in video form, very much swaying people towards the leak being legitimate. Another match was posted of Bowser Jr., Bowser, Kirby, and Pikachu battling on Battlefield. However, very soon after these were posted, Nintendo of America struck them down and removed them from YouTube entirely, which threw even more suspicion into the mix. If this was simply a rumor or straight up fake or somebody's clever mod, Nintendo wouldn't really care about it being up, which suggested that it was completely real and that they were suppressing an actual leak of the game. But of course, this is the internet, so the video was immediately downloaded, and we still have it to this day. Lastly, an Imager album was uploaded later that day, showing off different menus, classic mode screenshots, and trophies. Comparing these images to some of Sakurai's pick of the day images that included menus and stuff like that, these matched up very, very closely, and Shulk himself was of course revealed in a later Nintendo Direct, with everything that was shown in the videos, screenshots, and text posts being completely accurate. And that's pretty much where this leak ends. We got a ton of information out of it, and while people were skeptical of it all the way through, as soon as Shulk was revealed, pretty much everyone was content with the fact that this leak was indeed real. And for those who were the minority of skeptics, once the game actually came out, or at least it got leaked and people started doing footage that way, and we saw the full roster come out, they had to accept that this was real, because everything that was said in these leaks ended up being true. Tomodachi Life's furniture placement, the fact that Shulk, Bowser Jr., Duck Hunt were all characters that were actually in the game and not just made up by some 4chan person. Like, literally everything that was said ended up being correct, and that is presumably because this actually did come from an insider from the ESRB. I guess it is possible that the person wasn't actually affiliated with the ESRB, but maybe they simply wanted people to take their leak legitimately and seriously, and so they thought maybe by making that the name that it would give them a bit more credibility. But there is also the possibility, and probably the reality, that this person actually did simply work for the ESRB and was simply taking pictures very discreetly. But yeah, that is pretty much the whole leak. The only other thing that I could think to mention is, of course, the Tharja trophy. And that situation is that there was a trophy of Tharja from Fire Emblem, and she was very scantily clad. Her clothing was rather revealing, and either the ESRB or one of the other ratings boards throughout the world had an issue with this, thought it wasn't appropriate, and so they wanted it removed, I guess, because we have images of it being on this leak, but when the final game actually came out, it was seemingly patched out because there was exactly one less trophy than the ESRB leak showed us, and so the only one that was missing was Tharja, and so that just sort of added retroactive credibility to this leak, even though we knew it ended up being real in the first place. Leaks are always a mainstay with Smash Bros. Games, whether they end up fake or completely legitimate, but very seldom is Nintendo the culprit for the leaks. There are 2 instances where that was the case though, and the Big N essentially leaked whole fighters prior to their reveals. The Smash Ultimate website prior to the game's release used to update periodically with little bits of info, and sometimes they would reveal short samples of songs. On August 7th, 2018, the video on the site that was previously titled Galaga Medley was mistakenly renamed to Bloody Tears/Monster Dance, the titles of 2 Castlevania tracks. This of course pointed to the fact that a Castlevania fighter would be joining Smash. The video title was then later corrected. Literally the next day, August 8th, Simon and Richter Belmont were revealed as fighters. While many would correctly predict either one of these Belmonts, it was still a surprise to receive them both in the same game at once, so the fun wasn't completely spoiled. Something similar happened again, though this time with DLC. At the time, it was still unknown who the 4th and 5th Fighters Pass fighters would be. The Nintendo of Europe website was updated with a new page for the 4th fighter. At the bottom of the page was the copyright information for everything related to Smash, but notable this time was a new one, SNK Corporation. This led to widespread speculation that the next fighter was from SNK, with Terry Bogard being the general assumption. Others thought that the copyright information might have been mistakenly copy-pasted from another game on the website, SNK Heroines Tag Team Frenzy. But a few days later, Terry was officially revealed, confirming that this was indeed an unintended leak by Nintendo. This rumor started on a GeoCities website, which is one of the earliest web hosting services. The page claimed that it had information about a hidden character in Smash, and the title of the page was even a super secret character, no fake, which is kinda how you know it's fake. And this character was none other than Toad. The method for unlocking this super secret character is pretty convoluted, but this all-knowing GeoCities user has all of the information that we mere mortals do not. First, you need to complete Classic Mode and get to the credits. During the credits minigame, you need to shoot every single target. Every name, every logo at the end, literally every single thing. Then, allegedly, you will be able to shoot the final text that you aren't supposed to be able to. And this is only step 1 of this very well thought out method. I mean, Nintendo they went above and beyond with these unlock criteria. Next, you need to hop into adventure mode with any character and complete the mode without using any continues. At the end of this, a new challenger will approach, and that character is of course Toad-shaped. After beating him, you'll allegedly unlock him, but there's more to this character now that we supposedly have him. Apparently, Toad is the fastest character in the game. His unlock message even says that his awesome speed is now yours to command. Toad can apparently pull up turnips just like Peach, but can also pull mushrooms from the ground, which seems a little busted. The apparent leak also includes a few screenshots, but they must have been taken by ants because they are incredibly tiny, presumably to help cover up any flaws in the Photoshop. One shows Toad fighting Mewtwo on Flat Zone, and another shows the same 2 characters on Yoshi's Island. Lastly is the character select screen with a Toad icon now added, making the entire thing completely lopsided now. According to the website, Toad apparently does not have a victory video at the end of Classic Mode, doesn't exist in All-Star Mode, and isn't a part of any of Event Mode. Now, aside from there being no evidence of Toad existing in the game, logically it makes no sense for Toad to appear where he does on the character select screen because every character is grouped roughly by their series. Mario characters are all together, Zelda characters are all together. It just makes sense for them to all be near each other to sort of help the character select screen flow. But aside from this being very obviously fake, the site itself is super scuffed. Tons of misspellings and weird grammar and punctuation everywhere. The level of detail on the photoshops is also very sketchy at best. In an attempt to make the images seem more legitimate, the hoaxer took stills of Toad running during adventure mode and placed them into screenshots from actual gameplay. The trouble is we never see any pose different from what's seen in adventure mode, and in the limited screenshots we never see any of the moves that the site claims he can use, which makes this incredibly fishy at best. You also really wouldn't expect a major secret character like this to be debuted on a very scuffed looking GeoCities website. Another place that you wouldn't expect a completely false hoax to surface is in a credible magazine, but that's exactly where it happened, and it propagated the most popular hoax in all of Melee. Electronic Gaming Monthly, which still runs to this day, ran an April Fool's joke in one of their issues that stated that both Sonic and Tails could be unlocked in Melee if you defeated 20 enemies in Cruel Melee. The amount of detail in the alleged leak was roughly the same as the Toad leak, and while it had the resources of a big magazine studio to make it look convincing, it was meant to look bad almost intentionally, since it wasn't meant to be taken seriously in the first place. A few things ruined this leak's appearance as legitimate. First, the message is poorly formatted using a ton of capitalization. The places that both Sonic and Tails are on the character select screen also break the character series rule, so that's another red flag. The art used for Sonic on the character select screen roster is completely reused from Sonic Adventure for the Dreamcast. Smash always uses original art for their games, and this was just copy and pasted. Electronic Gaming Monthly also regularly made April Fool's Day jokes, and always somehow included the numbers 4 and 1 as a reference to the date. And in this joke, Sonic was apparently unlocked on April 1st, 2002. But the most obvious debunk is simply that the characters don't exist and the method doesn't work. Nothing in the game's file suggests anything close to Sonic or Tails being included, and what's more, 20 enemies killed in Cruel Melee has obviously been done, and there's not been any reward afterwards. And the funniest part is that this was never actually meant to be a hoax, it was just meant to be a very obvious April Fool's prank, but unfortunately, it got picked up by the internet and it became a thing of legend. Nintendo Power, a Nintendo-focused magazine, even covered it in an article in the next issue after April, stating that the rumor itself was fake, and the official Melee website even had an excerpt about it because it had just gotten so big. Electronic Gaming Monthly officially stated in their next issue that the method was an April Fool's prank, and it even mocked those who believed it. But they did run a kind of neat contest type thing afterwards, and if you could actually send them 20 KOs in Cruel Smash on video, they would award you with Sonic Adventure 2 Battle. For both Toad and Sonic and Tails, it doesn't make sense for the game to secretly have a character hidden. When you unlock every character and you obtain every trophy, the game gives you a sort of congratulations notification saying that you've done so. But if any of these characters were real, there would still be characters and trophies to get, and thus the got all characters, got all trophies notifications would not make sense. The number of proper hoaxes that surface for Brawl is actually incredibly low, if there were any at all. Not many of them are notable enough to really be discussed. Photoshop was getting into more and more hands, and as a result, many fake roster screenshots emerged. However, these were not very good and would often simply slap pre-existing renders on the icons that didn't even match Smash's style, and they would have absurd pics. But there was one roster hoax that was pretty notable, even if it was almost immediately dismissed. An alleged video surfaced claiming that if you changed the color palette on the random button, Geno would appear, indicating that at some point Geno was planned for the game before being scrapped or hidden away. This video seems to have vanished from the internet. I couldn't really find it, but it is just possible that it's just hidden among the hundreds of other videos about Geno in both Smash 4 and Ultimate, but the screenshot still exists from the video. But of course, this just doesn't make any sense. Geno wouldn't be hidden on the random button, and even if he was planned and scrapped, there would be no reason to have him accessible at all outside of a debug mode or a cheat or something like that. And if he was a fully completed character, it would make even less sense for him to be hidden in a random way. Like, what a waste of time that would be. Imagine coding a character, putting all this time and effort, just hundreds of hours, and then it gets hidden behind a random button as a gimmick that maybe people will find. It makes no sense to me. Now, aside from that, Brawl had a good number of rumors that relied more on word of mouth or text than any image or video evidence. First was a rumor that Brawl would see a cel-shaded Link, Ridley, and Bowser Jr. all as characters, while Young Link, Ice Climbers, and Mr. Game & Watch would be cut. These details supposedly came from a radio interview in Japan that Masahiro Sakurai gave, which is pretty convenient as radio is rarely recorded, leaving no evidence of these claims. But interestingly, one thing on this list did come true, which is the dropping of Young Link and the addition of Toon Link, which is easily just a lucky guess. But more speculation did come based on Sakurai's own words. After Snake's reveal, Sakurai said that one or two more third-party characters may join the roster. Once Sonic was revealed, many debated on who the supposed third character could be. Pac-Man, Mega Man, Geno, all these sort of big names were of course mentioned, but it wouldn't be until Smash 4 that we would finally get another third party. For Brawl, we just got those two. Adding more fighters to the game after the game's release was also a discussion as far back as Brawl. Around this time, Microsoft and Sony were embracing the idea of downloadable content, and many believed Nintendo would follow suit and add more characters to Brawl. This was encouraged by the supposed announcement of a new service called We Want More, which offered downloadable content for games on the Wii, and specifically called out that Brawl would receive 4 more characters and 2 new stages. This was additionally encouraged by the discovery of multiple unused character files in Brawl's data. However, the man himself deconfirmed these rumors. Mr. Sakurai stated that DLC was impossible for Brawl and thus would never come to be, because the Wii's flash-based internal hardware was simply incapable of modifying a game's contents based on downloads. On top of this, the alleged press announcement that was passed around online was also hosted on a free hosting service just like the Toad leak from earlier, and it didn't have any kind of official Nintendo domain attached to it. It was just made to look legitimate by the faker. And that really does it for any rumors and hoaxes that were notable for both Melee and Brawl. Just after the announcement of the next installment of Smash, an image began making the rounds on the internet, allegedly as an internal document from Nintendo that had been leaked out. This image had a logo that claimed that the next Smash game would be titled Super Smash Bros. Universe. The text apparently details some of the new ideas for the game. However, Sakurai himself stated that he had not begun any work on a new Smash game, as at the time he was still working on Kid Icarus Uprising. Additionally, Nintendo was asked for a statement on the leak, and they replied stating that they had no comment. Naturally, this supposed leak was completely false, as the next games weren't subtitled with Universe, not to mention that the documents don't mention anything about a 3DS version, which was a main focus of the next entry. December 2012 brought us our next rumor, which came from a user named Halabuton on GameFAQs, claiming that he worked for Bandai Namco, the developer assisting with the new Smash game, and that he had some insider information regarding the currently untitled Smash game. First, he stated that on Brawl's 5th anniversary, a Nintendo Direct would take place as a series retrospective with some new information regarding Smash 4 sprinkled in. He also stated claims of bits of the new roster. He said that there were going to be a pair of retro characters that had an East versus West concept. Takamaru from the mysterious Murasame Castle, and Little Mac from Punch-Out! King K. Rool and Ridley were also being added, as well as Shulk, Dylan from Dylan's Rolling Western, Girahim from Skyward Sword, a Platinum Games character that he believed was from the Wonderful 101, and Yoshi's partner from Yoshi's Woolly World. He also listed a few stages, such as Starship Mario from Galaxy 2, Giant Chasm from Pokemon Black and White 2, Pushmo Park from Pushmo, and Cookie Country from Kirby's Return to Dreamland. However, the date that he claimed would have a Nintendo Direct came and went without any Direct or any news of Smash 4 at all, making many believe his claims to be false. Of course, by the time the game came out, we knew it was all a hoax, but it's actually interesting how a lot of his choices ended up in Smash in some way or another. He accurately guessed Little Mac, Shulk, and a Platinum Games character, though he was wrong about Wonderful 101 because Bayonetta was the Platinum Games rep. His guesses of Takamaru, Dylan, and Girahim were also interesting, as all 3 of those became assist trophies rather than fighters. Next, let's talk about the now infamous Gamatsu leaks. These were a series of leaks that were sent anonymously to the owner of the gaming website Gamatsu, Sal Romano, claiming to have information about Smash 4's roster. The first email sent to Sal stated that the newcomers would be Animal Crossing Guy, Mega Man, the female trainer from Wii Fit, Little Mac, me, and Pac-Man. After E3 2013, Villager, Mega Man, and Wii Fit Trainer were all confirmed as new characters, and while the first 2 seemed to be natural additions, Wii Fit Trainer really was an out-of-nowhere pick, as Sakurai himself even stated that this was a character that he intended for not a single person to expect. So this particular fighter is what made people believe that this person had very credible information, as no one really was guessing Wii Fit to be added to the game. Little Mac was also later revealed, though this was another fighter that seemed natural and that a lot of people were guessing, and so people were less surprised about this correct leak because that of course could have just been easy guesswork. However, Rosalina and Luma were revealed during a December 2013 Nintendo Direct, and the leaker had not made any mention of this character in his emails to Sal, causing people to question their information. In April 2014, just a few hours before a Super Smash Bros. Direct, the leaker again contacted Sal with more information, this time reaffirming that Pac-Man and Mii would both be in the game, as well as new information that Shulk, Palutena, Chrom, and the Chorus Kids would all be fighters. They also claimed that a Pokemon from X and Y would be added, though they were unclear of the identity. Greninja was revealed at the end of this April Smash Direct, however, many people began to doubt the leaker's accuracy. All he said was that a Pokemon from X and Y would be added, and a huge blanket statement like this is very easy to make. With the new generation happening around the time of Smash 4's development and over 70 new Pokemon, it's a very vague statement that is easy to be right about. Before E3 2014, just like with the previous Nintendo Direct, Sal received yet another email. This one once again doubled down that Pac-Man, Mii's, which had now been called Mii Fighters, Palutena, Chrom, Shulk, and the Chorus Kids would all be playable, and that while they were unsure of any new fighters, they did know that DLC was currently planned. With the Nintendo Direct for E3 completed, both Mii Fighters and Palutena had been confirmed, with Pac-Man being confirmed later that day in a press conference, leaving only Shulk, Chrom, and Chorus Kids unconfirmed. Prior to yet another Smash reveal sometime later, the leaker sent Sal an email simply saying to enjoy Shulk. This was followed up by another email that said, I only know what has been done, not what or when they will be made available. Sakurai may change his mind, and he does all the time. Shulk will not be changed. However, the reveal that was immediately after this email was actually for Captain Falcon, Lucina, and Robin. Not only was Shulk nowhere to be found, but Chrom himself was actually deconfirmed, shown to be only a part of Robin's final smash and not a fighter himself. And this shattered any confidence that anyone had in the leaker. Sal contacted the leaker asking for clarification, but got no reply and never heard from them again. To this day, we are still unclear whether any of the information the leaker had was legitimate or simply really lucky guesswork. There is also the possibility that the leaker had access to old information, as Chrom was considered by Sakurai briefly at some point, and there is evidence in the game's files that a Rhythm Heaven character was considered as a fighter. But a ton of their information did end up being accurate, especially with the first leak and especially with Wii Fit Trainer, but we're simply unsure of who they were and where they got their information. The next hoax we'll talk about is the Lucina hoax, which allegedly revealed one of Sakurai's Image of the Day posts early. A post was made to the All Is Brawl forum showing the image of Mario fighting Lucina on a stage based on the Wind Waker. This image never ended up surfacing in any official capacity, and it was confirmed to be a mixture of multiple Brawl mods. The stage, as well as Lucina, were both additions to Brawl made by modders, and Mario's more cartoony appearance was a texture hack made specifically to match the appearance of Smash 4. This hoax actually set a standard for fact-checking in a way. Any new images that were allegedly leaked from insiders were immediately checked against other Brawl mods to tell if they were legitimate. The next hoax to surface regarded both Jigglypuff and Ness, neither of which had been confirmed to be in the game. A supposedly leaked 3DS screenshot of the two on Battlefield was posted online in November 2013, and admittedly this image does look very real. However, people began to analyze it and they found that the image had a number of inconsistencies compared to an officially released image on the same stage. The consistency of the outline in both color and thickness, concerns with the models that were used, and the lack of detailed shadows were some of the main issues with the fake image. Additionally, Ness's alleged render was posted online, although you can sort of tell that this one is actually just a drawing rather than a render from a 3D model. And of course, while both of these were fake, Jigglypuff and Ness both ended up in the final game. A similar leak happened in January 2014, with two supposed images of Palutena and Mario in the 3DS version of the game. This image seemed to pass the basic fake checks that most skeptical fans go through, unlike the previous one, and there wasn't any kind of a Brawl mod that seemed to match this Palutena model, And furthermore, the model and the pose were unique to any other Palutena appearance, so it was clear that this wasn't simply photoshopped or some kind of trickery from already existing Palutena media. Despite Palutena's eventual addition to the game, many noted that the model was not the same in the official reveal as in the leaked images, and the creator finally came forward in a 4chan thread showing the models that they had created in order to make it look like it had been on the 3DS. The last few rumors are less hoaxes, and they're more either voice actors or representatives getting tongue-tied or confused, or circumstantial evidence that ended up being changed. Matt Ryan of Nintendo of Canada, for example, claimed that Rayman would be in the game in an official statement, but then he later clarified that he was referring to a Rayman trophy rather than a full-on character.
So, Pac-Man is one of the new characters we announced at E3. People are pretty excited about that.
I'm most excited about that.
Rayman and a whole bunch of others.
At the time, people of course thought he was covering up an accidental leak and that Rayman was actually in the game, but of course, he wasn't. Another involved Shovel Knight, claiming that the character would be in the game based on the upcoming announcement of a Shovel Knight amiibo. While this did indeed happen, this was only for use with the 3DS and Wii U versions of Shovel Knight. This rumor was likely further spurred on by the fact that the concept art for the Shovel Knight amiibo included the Smash Bros. Base, and the fact that at the time the amiibo was leaked, only Smash-related amiibo had been released. There was also a case where Ruben Langdon, the voice actor for Ken Masters, Dante from Devil May Cry, and Raiden, claimed that he had voiced Raiden for Super Smash Bros., but then apparently got confused and ended up actually voicing him for PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale. And it wasn't in fact that he did voice work at all, it was that he did motion capture work and simply got confused and talked about it on Twitter or in an interview or something. Prior to the official announcement of Roy and Ryu in Smash 4, files were discovered in version 1.0.6 of Smash for 3DS, indicating that these characters would be in the game. These files were specifically their victory themes, which had likely been accidentally included in the patch update. Other DLC information was discovered that suggested future DLC fighters and the return of the Dreamland stage from Smash 64. The same data miner was then able to actually download version 1.0.8 before its official release, which had both Roy and Ryu's files in it. He began showing things off on Twitter, from classic mode videos to art, costumes, and trophies. Lucas was also included in this update, but this was at least a character that had been officially announced. Roy and Ryu still weren't revealed. Eventually, another data miner was able to edit his game and place the DLC fighters data over Mario, allowing him to play these characters early in a weird roundabout way. The stream highlights were uploaded to YouTube and covered by big Smash News channels, and Nintendo would copy strike all of these, blocking them worldwide. Eventually, Roy and Ryu were revealed and released on the very same day alongside Lucas, which explains why the 1.0.8 patch had their files ready to go. But this would serve as an important lesson for Nintendo on the lengths that people will go to in order to play characters early.